Okay, the time is 3 o'clock, and I will call the Tuesday, October 25th Organizational Council meeting to order. And with that, I will begin with the land acknowledgement that the City of Fort Saskatchewan is located within Treaty 6 territory and Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 4, the ancestral and traditional, that doesn't sound right, but traditional territory of the Nihilwak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people whose footsteps we have marked the land for generations, and it is because of our treaty relationship that we can live, work, and play on Treaty 6 territory. All right, so with that, this is an organizational council meeting that we'll start with. So I get to have a few introductory remarks and just welcome everybody to the October 25th organizational meeting. And just like to say, I'm not sure where the time has gone, but this is the conclusion of the first year of our 2021 to 2025 term, and it's really a good time to reflect. So 1 year ago, we actually stood at the Shell Theatre on stage being sworn in as we were still living in a COVID world. And it was just so different because we had to be at least 6 feet apart, 6 feet apart from each other. So, you know, just having your first interactions with the new council made it even more difficult. For the next few months, council and administration, of course, were required to hold our council meetings virtually. And when we got our business done, but the first meetings back in council chambers, and when we came in here, it was beautiful. New technology had been put in so that we could do both virtually and be in person. So it really made a difference for how we could get our business done. But I think it's safe to say we're all very, very excited to be back face to face and starting to enter into a world of normal once again, whatever normal would look like. So new businesses have been opening over the last year. There's been good news stories emerging from our industrial partners. New subdivisions with diverse housing options are being built. Nonprofit organizations are busy returning to in-person events. Sports and recreation are busier than ever as parents are trying to get their kids out and back into their sporting world. I think the highlight of this term, though, this last year, will go down as the October opening of the twinned Highway 15 bridge, and it. Safe to say, I think that is probably one of the most highlighted areas that all of our citizens were looking forward to, and it's finally happened. So it's nice to have the highway bridge finally twinned. So as City Council ventures into year two of this term, we know City Council will be faced with making, the best decisions we can for our community. We know there's several studies that are underway, so over the course of the next few months, Council will be reviewing them, and these studies will help guide us on our major projects that are being proposed for the future. So, I would like to take a moment just to thank Mr. Fleming and his team, for the work that goes into ensuring that Council always has the information so that we can make informed decisions. It's really critical that, a lot of research is always done and provided to us. So thank you very much for your work. So in closing, I would just like to say thank you to City Council for always being so passionate about being on Council. And I hope you'll agree with me that it is truly an honor that we all get to serve our community. So with that, we'll get started on year 2 of this term. So thank you. So with that, our first item that we have is council meeting dates and times. Brenda Moulter presenting.
Your Worship and members of Council, the first item on the organizational meeting agenda is to request approval of the meeting dates and times. With that, there are 6 motions that are presented. The first one relates to the council meetings being set for the second and fourth Tuesday of each month at 2 p.m. The second motion is to set the committee of the whole meetings on the third Tuesday of the month at 2 p.m. The third motion is for the cancellation of the November 22nd, December 27th, July 25th, and August 8th regular council meetings. The next motion is for canceling the November 15th, December 20th, July 18th, and August 15th Committee of the Whole meeting. The fifth motion is to schedule a special council meeting on Tuesday, November 15th at 1 p.m. to discuss the secondary water source project, fire services, and the city manager's annual performance review. And the last motion is to request approval for rescheduling the Tuesday, July 11th meeting and to July 4th, 2023. And with that, I'd request approval.
Okay, I'll just ask if there's any questions of Ms. Moulter on any of these items, dates, times, anything. And if not, then because there's 6 motions required, maybe everybody can make a motion so you get your name into the organizational minutes. So you want to just start on the right and do the first one and we'll work our way around. Go ahead, Councillor Nguyen.
I move that council approve the schedule of regular council meetings for the City of Fort Saskatchewan to be held on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month through virtual means and or in person in council chambers at City Hall, Fort Saskatchewan, commencing at 2 p.m. And should council be required to meet in camera, they may do so as the last order of business on the agenda or as agreed upon by council to discuss matters as permitted under FOIP.
All right, thank you. Do you have anything to speak in favor? No? All right, is there any discussion and debate on this? Not seeing any. I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried. Thank you. Councillor Kelly, would you like to do the next one? Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you. I move that council approve committee of the whole meetings to be held on the third Tuesday of each month or as required at the call of the mayor through virtual means and or in person in council chambers at City Hall, 1005 102 Street, Fort Saskatchewan, commencing at 2 p.m. And should the committee of the whole be required to meet in camera, they may do so as the last order of business on the agenda or as agreed upon by the members to discuss matters as permitted under the Freedom of Information and Protection Privacy Act.
Thank you. Do you have anything to speak in favor of?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any discussion and debate? Not seeing any, I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried. Councillor Abatoye, would you like to do the next one?
Thank you. I'll make a motion the council cancel the following City of Fort Saskatchewan regular council meetings: Tuesday, November 22nd, December 27th, 2022, and July 25th, 2023, and August 8th, 2023.
Thank you. Do you have anything to speak in favor?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything on discussion and debate? Not seeing any. I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried. Thank you. Councillor Blissard, would you like to do the next one?
Certainly. I'd like to make a motion that council cancel the following City of Fort Saskatchewan Committee of the Whole meetings: Tuesday, November 15th, Tuesday, December 20th, Tuesday, July 18th, 2023, Tuesday, August 15th, 2023.
Thank you. Do you have anything to speak in favor?
No.
Thank you. It's open for discussion and debate. Not seeing any. I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried. Thank you. Councillor Harris, would you like to do the next one? Can you push? Okay, go ahead.
So many moving parts. I would move that council reschedule or schedule a special council meeting for Tuesday, November the 15th, 2022, commencing at 1 p.m., and that the special council meeting be held in camera to discuss the secondary water source project, fire services, and the city manager's annual performance review in accordance with Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Act, Section 24, Sub 1. Advice from officials, advice proposals, recommendations for or by a public body, and Section 19, Sub 2, confidential evaluations, and further that the meeting be held in the council committee room at City Hall.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything to speak in favor?
Nothing.
Nothing. It's open for discussion and debate. Not seeing any. I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is almost too fast. That is carried. Thank you. Councillor Nguyen, do you want to do the last one there?
I didn't realize we had one to go. I move that council reschedule the two. Did we not just do that one? Oh no, this is, sorry.
Number 6.
Yeah. I move that council reschedule the Tuesday, July 11, 2023 regular council meeting to Tuesday, July 4th, 2023.
Great. Thank you. Do you have anything to speak in favor?
And nothing.
No. Okay. It's open for discussion and debate. Not seeing any. Motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. And that is carried. All right. Thank you very much. We will continue on with a council appointment of council representatives to boards and committees. Ms. Moulter.
Your Worship and members of council, for this item, we have 2 separate motions. The first one requests approval of the boards and committees as attached to the report. The second motion is specific to the Edmonton Metropolitan Transit Services Commission. Based on their bylaws, they do request that members be appointed for a 2-year term. So for that instance, we would ask that a separate motion be made for Councillor Harris to be appointed to that until October 2024.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions? Do you have a question, Councillor Kelly, or motion?
Question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, wouldn't your second year be the year coming up? In other words, if it was 2 years now, we're appointing you for years 2 and 3 consecutively, not year 1 and 2.
Yeah, no, the way the bylaws were written.
Can you push your button?
The way the bylaws were written at the formation of the commission, so the first term that we had for this past 1-year term it was the first year. Now what they're saying is going forward, they want to maintain the continuity in the appointment to the board from each municipality for that 2-year period. So the first year was basically the inaugural period when we were starting it up and passing the bylaws, and then now it moves into a 2-year rotation.
And please don't misunderstand me. I don't have a problem with your appointment, but if you are appointed for year 2 and 3 of a 4-year term, it would be impossible to have somebody else from this council go on that board for year 4.
I think at this point in time, they're maintaining the continuity because we will be doing a governance review in 2023. And there's a potential that there will be modifications following the governance review to any of the bylaws of the commission at that point in time. But I would suggest in this term of office, I've served in the inaugural board, and now for a 2-year term, and then there would be a 1-year remaining term.
Okay, I'm going to go to Mr. Fleming.
To your worship, just a note on this too, the commission bylaws do allow the municipality to change their member as well, their appointment. So they ask for a 2-year appointment because I do think they want to promote that continuity, but it does also say in there that if a member wishes to replace their appointment, they can do that. So I don't think we're bound. The 2 years is not it can be changed.
Again, I stress, don't misunderstand me. I have no problem with the appointment.
Okay,
But I'm looking out a couple of years.
so this is questions.
This is still questions. What happens 2 years from now when they still want a 2-year appointment, if it's that important?
Yeah, through your worship, I don't know if they realize the way they overlap the 2-year terms with an election in the middle there, but council could appoint anyone they want to for the 4th year. If that person's not on council anymore, the city would have to appoint someone else. So.
Okay, you have an answer to the question? Because I'm not getting into debate on all of this.
Only insofar as a clarification is that there will be a governance review in 2023. And in the context of that governance review, there'll be an opportunity to potentially open up any of the specifications within the bylaws, which could and would deal with any of those things that have been identified as, I guess, shortcomings in the initial planning in the bylaw development phase. And it was probably an oversight more than anything, Brian. And I think at this point in time, it maintains the continuity. So that was my take as to how the bylaws were ultimately posited.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, somebody like to make the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Kelly. You can make the first one.
You bet. I move the council approve the recommended 2022/23 council member board, committee, and commission appointments as presented. And it's in our package. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak in favor of the motion?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything on discussion and debate? Not seeing anything. I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried. All right, we've got a second motion. Councillor Abatoye. Oops. Go ahead.
Thank you. I move that council approve the appointment of Councillor Harris to the Edmonton Metropolitan Transit Services Commission for a 2-year term expiring October 2024.
Okay, thank you. Do you wish to speak to the motion? Thank you. Any discussion and debate? Okay, not seeing any. I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried. So with that, that concludes our organizational meeting. So I will adjourn the organizational meeting. We will recess for 5 minutes, which will give Ms. Exley time to switch over what she needs to for technology. So we are in recess for 5 minutes. Okay, we will resume the meeting. We just concluded the organizational meeting for October 25th, and we will begin the October 25th regular council meeting. I did do the land acknowledgement at the beginning of the organizational meeting, so we will just begin with the approval of the October 6th, 2022 minutes, council minutes. And Councillor Abatoye, would you like to make the motion?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll move that council approves the October 6th regular council meeting minutes as presented and circulated.
Thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? Not seeing any. I will close the motion. Please cast your vote on the October 6th council meeting minutes. That is carried. The next item we have is the October 11th regular council meeting minutes. Require approval for that. Councillor Noyen.
I move that, excuse me, I move that council approve the minutes of the October 11th, 2022 regular council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? Not seeing any. I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. And that is carried. And we do not have any delegations. I will just note that Councillor Macon isn't with us here this evening or this afternoon. She did have a family emergency and got called away. So there was going to be a delegation for her item notice of motion, but that won't be happening this evening or this afternoon. So we will deal with that at that point in time. So we no longer have any delegations that have registered to speak for this meeting. So we will move straight into new business, May to August 2022 Triannual Management and Financial Report. Clayton Northey presenting.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Good afternoon. I'm Clayton Northey, the city's manager of accounting and reporting, and I'm here today to present the August 2022 interim management and financial report. During the first 8 months of 2022, the city has returned to largely to pre-pandemic operating levels, despite a few disruptions in the early part of the year related to the Omicron variant. Some of the other highlights of the second third of 2022 include the adoption of the 2023 to 2026 strategic plan, the speed limit changes, reducing a number of speeds in residential areas to 40 kilometers an hour, and some increases in some other areas in compliance with or consistent with Vision Zero. The implementation of property tax and assessment notices now being available electronically, alignment of the city's utility billing with meter reads, and implementation of the water portal, which allow residents to monitor their water usage in near real time. As well as implementation of the Downtown Action Plan continued throughout the period, and the city received a Community Revitalization Fund grant. Finally, phase 1 of the transfer station site enhancements opened up for the city's transfer station. The city's forecasting an operating budget surplus of 1.2 million in 2022, including 429,000 from municipal operations and 819 million from utility operations. Operating revenues were 1.7 million in the first 8 months of 1.7 million in the first 8 months of 2022, and are expected to be $1.5 million above budget for the year. Significant revenue variances include within utility user rates. The revenue is above budget due to a change to the water meter practice, water meter billing process that resulted in a one-time addition of 24 extra days of water consumption billed charged to 2022. Property tax, fines and penalties came in below budget due to delays in implementation or replacement and upgrades for the city's automated traffic enforcement cameras, as well as some impact of speed limit changes. User fees and charges are higher than expected for the year due to development and building permit revenue, as well as culture and recreation revenue coming in higher than expected. Culture and recreation is forecasting to be at approximately 85% of its 2019 levels overall. However, within that, there are some areas that are still below pre-pandemic levels. There was also, in the 2021 and 2022 operating budget, there was a temporary reduction to revenue projections due to facility closures that related to the pandemic. This was funded by a transfer from the Financial Stabilization Reserve. In 2022, we're expecting not to use the entire transfer. Investment income was also higher in the first 8 months of the year, and is expected to be higher for the year, largely due to the rate increases by the Bank of Canada flowing through to our investments, as well as higher investment balances. In the period, the Bank of Canada has raised rates by 3% since December 31st, 2021. Operating expenses were $43,000 higher than budget in the first 8 months of the year, and expected to be $229,000 above budget for the year. Significant variances include within contracted services, the JRC ice plant was carried forward from 2021 and is funded from reserves, or offset by a transfer from reserves. The snow removal was higher than normal due to a wetter winter and a higher amount of snow fall in the winter. And again, it's offset by a drawdown from the snow removal reserve. Service and maintenance contracts are below budget for the year due to delays in replacing the automated traffic enforcement cameras, which are now slated for early 2023. And material and supplies have come in up higher than budget, largely due to energy costs and other inflationary pressures, as well as sand and higher consumption of sand, chip, and salt for snow removal. More details on the operating results are available on page 4 of the interim report. The 2022 capital program consists of 39 projects, including 9 new projects and 30 multi-year projects that are carried forward from 2021. At August 31st, the city had 31 active projects, 5 complete and 3 that were on hold, primarily due to the bridge construction and another matter. The city has spent 7.6 million on capital expenditures in the first 8 months of the year, and is expecting to spend approximately 21.8 million to complete existing projects. More information on the city's capital program can be found in Appendix 3 of the report. The highlights in the changes in the city's financial position during the first 8 months of the year include a net decrease in the city's net financial assets. These numbers aren't correct here, so I'm not going to state them. I have the wrong note. It'll be a net decrease in the city's net financial assets, net increase from to 58.6 million at August 31st, and compared to 34.5 at December 31st and 53.3 at August 31st, 2021. Cash has increased since December 31st to 57.4 million from 45.7 million. And property tax receivables have decreased or have increased to 5.9 million from 1.5 million since December 31st. However, the largest chunk of this, it relates to approximately 4.4 million of that amount relates to the Fort Electronic Payment Plan, or FEP, which is a pre-authorized payment, a monthly payment for residents, as well as the grants and places taxes due from the province that are expected to be paid prior to the end of 2022. The city's long-term debt has decreased to 26.7 million and from 28.3 million at December 31st. And this is an ongoing drawdown of the city's of the repayment of the city's debts. There was a new debt issuance for 148,000 in June of 2022, and that is to pay for the Point-of-Pins water line, and will ultimately be repaid through the local improvement levy on that project. The city's financial reserves the city had approximately 51 million in uncommitted financial reserves at August 31st, and including 45 million in internally restricted reserves and 6.1 million in externally restricted reserves. The city's 2022 optimal balance for internally restricted reserves, excluding specific purpose reserves, is 33.9 million. In 2022, the optimal balance for the capital projects reserve decreased by approximately 5.1 million from 2021 levels, and this was related to changes, removal of some projects from the 10-year capital plan during 2022 budget deliberations. The city is the optimal balances are calculated based on the financial reserves policy, FIN 21-C, and is based on expected drawdowns of the reserves identified in the 10-year capital plan over the next 5 years. The financial reserve policy is under review at the moment, and we are expecting to present propose changes to council in early 2023. Appendix 1 of the report includes a summary of the city's financial reserve balances and commitments. With that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much for your presentations. We'll open it up for clarifying questions on the triennial report. All right. Go ahead, Councillor Kelly.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the report, by the way, and good report. It's well done. I have a question, camouflage, or a comment, I guess, camouflaged as a question. I'd like to refer you to page 3 of your report. I think page 15 of our package, for those that are looking that way. There's two numbers in there, the capital projects on page 3 and then the financial position. And the financial position is correct me if I'm wrong, net financial assets minus debt. It's a balance sheet number that we're required to report.
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, the net financial assets is your financial assets minus the total debt.
That's what I thought I was talking about. Okay. And the real question I have here, capital projects, we've still got approximately $22 million yet to expend on capital projects.
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, that is correct.
So wouldn't it make sense to report also, or in lieu of the way we're doing it now, the net uncommitted balance?
Through your worship, that's why we report the reserves the way we do, is to reflect that uncommitted funds that are available for councils for future decisions.
So the number you quoted in reserves of 77 million, I think, are...
Through your worship, the total reserves as at August 31st, both in committed and uncommitted, would be 70.1 million. The forecast uncommitted to the end of the year would be 51.2 million.
Okay, thank you. I'll think about that. Please come back to me.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abatoye, a couple questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Just some easy questions, and I really do appreciate your reports. A lot of my questions were answered as I read through them. So one of the things that you had mentioned in the report was that the property tax penalties were higher than budgeted. Is there a reason why? Are we seeing more people being unable to pay their property taxes, or what's going on?
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoya, the property tax penalties, we typically take a fairly conservative approach to them based on our long run outstanding property taxes over the year. Because of COVID, coming into the year, we were higher than what we were expecting to be, and we did see some late payments throughout this year as well. But typically it's probably more an artifact of our conservatism in the budget rather than something that we've done a change in the economy this year.
Well, we do have programs to support people who may face financial difficulties around paying property taxes. I know we talked about it some time ago. I'm wondering if we ever implemented that program.
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoya, maybe I'll pass this one to John or Troy, if that's
Mr.
possible.
Fleming?
Through your worship, we do not have any programs that would be in place to support somebody having difficulty paying their property taxes.
Okay. All right. Just one final question. Actually, I have two more, so maybe you come back to me. But I'm going to ask the second question. So with the increase of prime, by the government, did that impact our long-term debt?
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoya, the increase in the Bank of Canada prime rates doesn't impact our debt. Our debt that was already been issued, you will see a small increase. The rate, because of the point of pins waterline, it came in significantly higher than previous ones because we issued it this year.
Okay.
And future debt will be at a higher rate, but
Right.
not our previously issued debt is fixed.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Nguyen?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Norley. I just wanted to go touch base on the area that Councillor Kelly was discussing. So, capital projects, 2/3 of the way through the year, we essentially with the numbers that you've shown, paid out a third. And so we have 2/3 of that budget left to pay out current projects that are undergoing. I'm assuming most of this is going to projects that are occurring during the summer due to our season. Why don't we have more of a work in progress payment for these RFPs that are being fulfilled, so that this number at this point of the year in the year reflects more accurately what is going to be completed and payments towards that.
Through your worship to Councillor Nguyen, I'm going to try to answer this.
Mr. Schaefer's coming to join you.
Let me.
Great. That might be the guy.
There you go. Thanks.
Your worship to Councillor Nguyen, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. It is a matter of timing. Especially this year, a lot of our projects completed, roadworks, things like that, those big projects through August, September. Billing comes the next week, so September, October, so it misses that August 31st deadline. So while we have committed contracts, it's just from a billing perspective, a lot of those major projects haven't been, at least as August 31st, hadn't been billed yet.
Right. Okay. And that's exactly what I kind of thought. That was my my line of reasoning behind it. So that's good to know. Thanks very much. I have a second question just about investments, and I think I've asked this in another triennial update. I just wanted to scroll to it here. Apologies. Well, maybe come back to me.
Okay, I'll put you on the list again. Okay. I'm going to put myself in the speaking order right now. So I had a question regarding the financial reserves as well, because when I was reading it and you talked about the 70 million and 19 million is committed, but when you talk about the 51 million and it says including the 45 million in internally restricted reserves, so that's for the optimum balances, correct?
Your worship, the internally restricted reserves are the reserves that basically all of our reserves, with the exception of developer levies, there's a few reserves at the bottom of that report, contributions in lieu of municipal land, the fire water line, perpetual care, that have an external covenant on them, that either through legislation or through an agreement with a third party, we can only use those funds for specified purposes. So we consider those as externally restricted. The internally would be the ones that are reserves created by council through the reserve policy.
Okay. It's just, it appear, it just looks like when I looked at it, like it was, so in other words, we couldn't take the 51 million if we got in a bind somewhere and wanted to build something for 51 million. You couldn't take that because 45 of that is externally restricted.
Your worship, that's the opposite. The 45 million is the portion that council could reallocate amongst the different reserves.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. I'm just reading that in reverse. All right. Councillor Harris? No. Oh, you're okay. Councillor Blizzard? We go through the order once.
Yeah, thanks for the report. Lots to look at, lots to read. I had a couple of questions, not specifically with numbers, but it says in the highlights the water portal was now open for people. How is the uptick on that? Do you find that lots of people are signing in? Or up for
Through
that?
your worship, maybe I can ask Ms. Norman to come answer that. Ms. Norman is our revenue services coordinator and manages utility billing.
Through your worship, we have seen a slight increase in the number of signups. We weren't expecting an overwhelming response right from the start, but as we've started to advertise, we have approximately 300 of our residents now signed up for the portal. So that is a fairly good number to begin with. We hope to see that increase, of course, but as of right now, we have approximately 300.
I had trouble signing up, so I'll give you a call. I just haven't had time yet, but yeah, I want to sign up. It sounds like a great way to go, especially for the people that might have water issues at times. So great way to check. And the other question I had was back to property taxes. So if someone is building a new house, are they given right away the option to go online to get their bill, or do they have to come in and ask for it? Like, you know, if there's somebody building a new house, would that not be a reasonable thing to do? Here's our contact and sign up for online.
Through your worship, my understanding is that they are given the option to sign up when they either purchase a new home or when they build a new home. But if maybe Ms. Norman can expand on that.
Through your worship, as soon as we receive the title for the property, they do have the option to sign up for e-billing, where they would receive their annual tax notice by email until we've actually received the title change or notification from a lawyer. Because in the current state where land titles is approximately 3 months delayed, if they do have notification from their lawyer that they have purchased the property, we can issue them a manual tax certificate, or sorry, not tax certificate, a tax notice. If they have purchased the property and it's in that time frame where they would be responsible for paying the taxes. So we do have options for them to receive that notification, even if they've just purchased the property.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going in the order. Councillor Kelly, you had asked me to come back to you, so you were at the top of the order.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to talk for a second, and you're going to want to come back to your chair, I'm pretty sure, about the extra utility billing in the year that generated almost $1.5 million. Did we talk about that in council? I don't recall, so refresh my memory, please.
Mr. Fleming?
Through your worship, I don't know if we ever attached figures to it, and I don't think there was ever a point where council approved that part of the process, but that was always considered to be part of the the multi-step plan we had to deal with our water billing issues, was to get our timing in line with the month.
And I get it from a business perspective, absolutely, but from a resident's perspective, there's $1.5 million out of the community extra for utility services in the last year, or in this particular year, that they weren't used to seeing. How was that communicated, if it was, and how was it received?
Through your worship, it was communicated quite extensively. It was there were bill inserts, I know that, and we did do some advertising in the community as well. So I think it was over 3 months that we caught it up. 4 months that we sort of slowly moved the timeline. And from my recollection, although people had higher bills for those 4 months, there wasn't a significant amount of negative feedback over it.
And I will admit, mine are paid through the bank. I pay little attention to them unless they appear abnormally large. So page 6 for a last question, please. Clayton, I've raised this before, and this is a very minor issue, but I'm an accountant and it bugs me. Purchases from other governments. You detail them nicely, but there's not one government entity in there. Could we not come up with a better descriptor for at least our internal reporting?
Through your worship, I can, to Councillor Kelly, I can certainly look at changing the title there. That is a standard term from public sector accounting that we would normally use for boards, agencies, and commissions, in addition to other senior levels of government, though.
And I get that. I appreciate it. I like things to make sense, and that one just doesn't. Thank you. I'm good right now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Batoye?
Thank you. Just back to the utility rates. The report says that there was a shift of utility bills that required an additional 24 days of waste and water and sewer, additional days of water and sewer. So is that additional bill? And how was that adjusted? I just wanted a bit of clarification around that comment.
Through your worship to Councillor Apatoya, it was included over those 4 months. Those additional days were included into the bills for residents and it really comes out of probably the beginning of our water program. Those 24 days would have come out of when we started the water program many years ago, that those 24 days came from. So
I'm trying to make sense of the 24 days. Can you explain that?
Through your worship,
She's coming.
she's coming here.
Through your worship, the 24 days were a result of our water consumption always being billed a month behind. So for example, for this month of October, our fixed fees were billed for the month of, or for the dates of October 1st to October 31st. However, the water consumption was billed for the month of September. So there was always some confusion when people would see their bill that they were getting billed for water from October, but water from September, but fixed fees for October. So when we had access to our new tower reads, where we can pull reads at any day of the month, we took where we were normally back billing those, or not back billing, but we were billing a month behind for the water consumption, and we caught it up so that for the month of October, you're being billed for October 1st to October 31st for your water consumption as well as your fixed fees. But we, rather than have to bill people for that entire 24 days that they were billed, that they missed from the month before, we took the 4 months to make small incremental change to those read dates. So rather than bill for the whole 24 days in one bill, we used the month of January, February, March, and April of this year to make just small, like 4 to 5 day changes each month, so that it wasn't impactful for the residents, that those changes were small and incremental, so they wouldn't notice such a large increase, while we basically caught up our billing so that we're billing both consumption and fixed fees in the same month.
So it sounds to me like there were no actually additional. There was actually consumption that's already been done, but you had to somehow figure it out financially. So
through your worship, that is correct.
I just wanted to be clear about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thank you. So my question on investments, I'm just comparing two types of investments that we hold. So a long-term note has an average yield of 5% and about a year and a half to maturity. Comparing that to a GIC, 2.5% over a longer term to maturity. Is our new financial policy going to have a look at our investments and where we're putting our assets at the moment, given that interest rates are very promising for investments? And I'm gauging that based on the numbers that we're actually investing in these different types of investments.
Through your worship to Councillor Nguyen, we meet regularly to review our financial position and our investments, especially this year. What we've been doing as funds either come available, we've actually been investing in very short-term, very liquid funds over the year because we knew the interest rates were going up, and the advice that we're getting from our brokerage houses has consistently been telling us to shorten up our positions. What we're being advised right now is that we want to be keeping most of our position less than 2 years. We are as the numbers start to stabilize, as the interest rate starts to stabilize, which we expect in 2023, we are going to be looking to increase at some longer term positions so we can hedge some of the potential impact of a rate decrease in 24 and beyond. The advice that we're getting is that 2 to 3 years out right now, we're expecting to see a shift back to around 2 to 2.5% interest rates. So we want to hedge that as well. But at the moment, we're shortening our position.
Perfect, and that makes great sense, and thank you for the detail on that. And I know it's a very liquid market right now, so understandable what the advice that you're being given.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris.
So the question I've got is on utility billing. So where we have been to where we are today, a person sees what their last utility reading date was. They see what it is currently, and they ultimately see how many days of consumption they're being billed for. So it's clearly outlined on the bill. And if they've got electronic access, they can go in and look at past bills, or they can look at their own records to determine where they are. Typically, a month would have 30 to 32 days of consumption.
That is correct. The new billing cycle we have would actually be 30 or 31 days because it follows exactly the month.
So now going forward, everybody gets a consistent reading on a consistent date, and it's all done through the meter on the tower.
Through your worship, that is correct.
So it's a telemetry sort of thing then.
That's correct.
All right. So ultimately, we've gotten to the point now where people can rest assured that they've got accurate utility readings and charges as a result of those readings.
Through your worship, that is correct.
Yeah.
And as well as the portal, which now also gives them access to those any fluctuations that may occur during the month.
And so our purchases of water from the Capital Region Northeast Water Services Commission is more closely aligned with our billing now. So our revenue and our expense are more closely aligned, so we don't have lags in that regard in terms of carrying those monthly amounts over any given period of time.
Through your worship, that is correct.
So better overall financial reporting is what you're telling us.
That is correct.
Good. Good to hear.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly?
Yeah, thank you. One more and one last, I think, question. Your notes suggest that it's $1.5 million of extra water to catch up on the billing, but all utility bills, the wastewater is a function of the water. So of that 1.5, roughly half or 40% would be wastewater?
Through your worship, I'm just pulling this up here. It's actually about 1.1 million, and it's approximately, there's 576,000 in water supply and 505,000 in sewer service. The slight difference is that there's also bulk water included in water supply.
But it was not just water. I'm looking at a note above, but that's fine. I'll take your 1.1. The 1.1 is water and wastewater billing in that 24-day period, not just water.
That is correct.
Now, we pay for wastewater based on water purchases from the Water Commission, correct?
Through your worship, that's correct.
So as Councillor Harris just said, we've now caught up on that. We're not carrying that as well.
Through your worship, that aligns correctly.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That appears to be all the questions. So thank you very much for your information. All right, thank you. We will go on to property tax late payment waiver requests.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. I'm Trish Norman, Revenue Services Coordinator with the City. I'm here this afternoon to request Council's decision in regards to two property tax penalty waiver requests for the 2022 late payment penalties that were imposed. The first request is for property tax roll 099-3000. On September 21st, 2022, the City of Fort Saskatchewan received an application from a longtime resident and property owner requesting a waiver for property tax late payment penalties in accordance with the property tax penalty waiver policy and procedure. As of July the 8th, 2022, the property owner has paid the full balance of outstanding property tax arrears, including late payment penalties in the amount of $88.06. The property owner has consequently made an application for council to consider late payment penalty reimbursement under compassionate grounds. Administration is not authorized to make this decision, as only council has the authority to waive late payment penalties for property taxes. The city provides notice and time for property owners to pay their property taxes. Several payment options exist, allowing property owners to ensure payments are received by the due date of June 30th. This includes post-dated checks, online payments, and the Ford Electronic Payment Plan, which allows for monthly tax installments. Late payment penalties for property taxes are covered under the Municipal Government Act, and in accordance with the MGA, the city imposes penalties by means of a bylaw for non-payment of taxes by the due date. Administration mailed the 2022 assessment and property tax notices on May the 18th, 2022, with a payment due date of June 30th, 2022. For the decision this afternoon, Council has two alternatives. One, that Council deny the request to waive the late payment penalties applied to the Associated Property Tax Roll 0993,000 on July 1st, 2022 in the amount of $88.06. Or two, that Council grant the request to waive the late payment penalties applied to the Associated Property Tax Roll 0993,000 on July 1st, 2022 in the amount of $88.06. I can now answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. And before we go to questions, I will remind everybody that under FOIP, Council was provided the privileged information, the personal information. So in discussions, debate, questions, and comments, I just ask you to refrain from speaking to any of that personal information that we received in camera. So, okay. So, Councillor Harris, question?
The question I've got, Ms. Norman, so if in this case the $88.06 penalty were to be, or the request was to be granted, then would they get an $88 credit on their account that would carry forward, or would they get a check back, or what would happen in that case, assuming that the penalty's already been paid?
Through your worship, they would have that choice. They could either leave the credit on their account because it's already been paid, or if they would like to actually be reimbursed, then we would reimburse them by check.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional questions? Not seeing any. What is the wish of council? Councillor Kelly? Yes.
Thank you. To get discussion rolling, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move that council deny the request to waive the late payment penalties applied to the Associated Property Tax Roll 0993,000 on July 1, 2022 in the amount of $88.06.
Okay, so you may speak to your motion.
Property taxes and income taxes, we all have to pay them, and we all have to pay them on time. And if we didn't have significant penalties in place to force that payment, we would find that our accounts receivable balance would grow dramatically. I get it, it's unfortunate, but I'm also a long-term resident, and I've paid my property taxes here every year on time for more than 50 years, so, or close to 50 years, I should say. So unfortunate, I get it, but it is a long-time resident, you know the property tax due date, and you should look after it. So, and to be fair, you should pay the penalties. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we are on to discussion and debate. Councillor Harris?
I guess I would support that recommendation on the basis that we have done, I think, some pretty good things for residents who unfortunately, through one circumstance or another, get penalized. So breaking up the tax penalties into a number of installments so that if you go, you might miss June 30th, but you have the opportunity to pay the taxes before the next penalty date. So in this case, I think we've done that. So occasionally some people will unfortunately miss the payments. But if they then attend to paying those outstanding taxes, then ultimately the penalty amount is reduced. And so I think that's a very positive thing. So in this case, it's unfortunate, and for compassionate grounds, I certainly can understand those. But I've had a long history of municipal taxation, and I used to make recommendations to the council of the day to deny tax penalty waivers, almost in every instance. So in this case, I can support the recommendation and that resolution, and ultimately, fortunately, it's not a lot, and ultimately, it's been taken care of. So that's a positive thing in my mind.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abatoye, discussion and debate.
Thank you. Question before I speak on the motion. Other than the monthly payment that we allow residents pay, what other types of support do we provide? Or what other type of assistance do we provide for people who have to pay the penalties?
Through your worship, specifically for property taxes, we don't have programs other than the monthly payment option. other than paying it annually. We don't have any other options available.
Nothing else? Okay. I actually will not be supporting this motion. Based on the information I was provided to council, I think some things have been said. Long-time residents, never been late before, and penalty has been paid in full. And just based on compassionate grounds, council has the ability to waive penalties based on compassion. Just based on that, I will not be supporting this motion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blissard.
It's a tough one because honestly, I always feel like, yep, you do it, but we were given information that makes me a little bit more compassionate on this one. Longtime resident and other circumstances I won't mention. That I think I will not support this because I think this is one case where we could waive it once. But normally I would say, yep, you need to pay any penalty due. I guess I had a little softer heart with this one.
Okay, thank you. So I've got a question. So, and I don't think we asked this question before. I assume this individual isn't on a monthly payment schedule? Do they just pay it once a year?
Through your worship, that is correct.
Have they moved to a monthly payment schedule so that this doesn't happen again?
No,
they haven't.
They have not.
Okay, so unfortunately, I think there are tools that are available to our citizens to, if they are having budgeting or problems, that they can, work with the city and get signed up for monthly budgeting for it so that they don't end up in arrears. I think the tools are there and it's available to them. I feel compassionate about this one too, but unfortunately, I have to agree that, these are hard dates that are set, and it's no different than our Visa bills or other bills. If you don't pay it on time, you get charged for it. So on that basis, I will be supporting the motion. So Councillor Kelly, on close.
I have a question though. Would it be possible for the city, if council were to, or would it be possible for council to pass a motion that says you'll get your $88 rebate, but you must sign up for the monthly installment plan? Or make the $88 conditional upon signing up?
Through your worship, if that became part of the policy and procedure for the property tax penalty waiver, then I suppose that could be included.
But we would have to amend our policy
it would have to
first.
That's correct.
Perfect. I'm good with that answer. I think we've got an understanding on council of where they should go. I'm good. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. The motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. Motion is defeated 3-3. So,
if we go to the next motion, it's going to be defeated 3-3 too. So that means there's no rebate.
So just give me a second here. So on this, I'm going to go to parliamentary on this.
Your worship, when a motion is tied, you're correct, it is defeated. If a motion is presented to council and it doesn't pass, then that means that council has not approved anything. So either way, should the other motion come up and it's the same thing happens, council didn't make a decision.
So the question then, so what happens with this request?
The request was received, it was presented to council, council didn't make a decision, or the decision, there was no outcome because they were defeated.
Is that correct? Then
yes,
the penalty stays in effect.
Quo. There was no decision made one way or the other.
Okay, so then the penalty stays in effect. So then we would have to go to a different motion if it's defeated. It's the same thing that will happen, and if that's defeated as well, then it's just status quo. The motion stays in effect, or the penalty stays in effect. Okay, we have to have that one in a while. So that one's defeated. So then somebody who is on the, yes, what is your point of order?
The alternatives. I don't think the council needs to have a motion that says we deny. We can make the motion to grant, or we can just stay silent, one of the two. I would think that motion should always be positive and not negative in their contexts. Help me understand this a bit.
Through your worship, I think for clarity, because we've run into this situation with these particular property tax penalty waivers in the past, that in an attempt to make it a little bit clearer, that council had the two options. But I would agree that it does become confusing when one is defeated.
Okay, so I'll go to Councillor Batoye.
Well, I'm just going to put the motion on the floor and let's see, maybe one person might be touched. I'll make a motion that council grants the request to waive the late payment penalties applied to the associated property tax roll 0993000 on July 1st, 2022 in the amount of $88.06.
Do you wish to speak to your motion?
Just that, I think it's been said already, right? This amount is so insignificant to the city, but could make a major impact in this person's life. And just again, back to the point of on compassionate grounds, we have the ability to waive penalties based on compassion. And I think this individual is the exact person that needs that's waiver, based on compassionate grounds. I think this is a perfect picture for what we painted in the policy to be able to provide those types of waivers. So I hope, like I said, someone's heart is touched.
Okay, thank you. It's open for discussion and debate. Councillor Harris.
I take exception to the way these reports are presented in any regard, and I totally support a negative recommendation as it relates to penalties. As I said, I dealt with tax receivables and all that sort of stuff when I worked at Strathcona County for about 8 years, and never in that period of time, and we had many tax penalty waivers, did we ever recommend that they be granted. It was always that the request be denied. And I would almost expect that administration, that should be in these reports, first thing, that the request be denied. The alternative could be to grant it for whatever reason. And I respect the fact that we have to deal with FOIP now, which we didn't have to in my day. So we could say in those circumstances what the request was for, and the justification on the part of the individual requesting the waiver. But in this case, it's not a significant amount, and even if it were, there's still a responsibility to pay taxes by the due date. And as I stated earlier, we have taken steps to ensure that if somebody is prudent and they realize they've made a mistake, and they only get penalized with one of the penalties. How many are there? 4?
Through your worship, in the current year, there are 3.
3, and it adds up to 18%.
That's correct. That is correct.
Right. So in this case, the first one was
3%.
3. Right. It's not a significant amount, but it teaches everybody else the fact that you have to pay your taxes, and you have to pay your taxes on time. And if you don't, you can reduce your tax liability or your penalty liability by paying it on time, in which case we have done that for all 3 that are in this case. So in this case, I can't support the recommendation. So it's going to come down to the fact if it's a 3-3, unless somebody wants to flip over to the other side for compassionate grounds. But at this point in time, I think we have to deny these requests for the reasons that I've stated and the reasons the administration has brought to our attention.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
I can fully appreciate the opinions expressed here right now. I mean, we do have this policy, and it comes before council for consideration. And I believe that we were given information to guide us through perhaps a thought process of this specific request. This property owner obviously undertook a process themselves to submit this appeal, and they did it correctly. And there are circumstances that are certainly different than others. So I think, based on the information that we've been given, yes, there are deadlines for this payment for property tax payments. It was not met, but knowing the whole story around this circumstance certainly does change my mind about what we should do, and it is a very small sum of money as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Blizzard.
I'm just going to state that I have actually called a credit card company because I was late, and it was a reasonable request, and they gave me my penalty back. So it does happen in other places, not just here. So there is some compassion when you're a steady, good customer to reward them with the very, very rare mistake.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kelly.
I was going to remain silent, but Councillor Blizzard, I must respond to that. I spent 40 years, 1/3 of my life for 40 years doing tax returns with a hard date of April 30th. Had I not made the hard date of April 30th, I personally would have been responsible for the penalties and the interest. I personally. So as a consequence, I made darn sure I made the date April 30th for every client I had. And that meant working 7 days a week for 2 months consecutive every year. So I get the compassion. CRA would have shown no compassion for me had I not filed 30 returns the last day's worth on April 30th. There would have been zero compassion. Absolutely zero. The credit card makes money off of you. The city doesn't make money off of its ratepayers. It provides a service to them. There is a difference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to make a comment as well, because you feel the pressure that's saying, well, you're not compassionate if you don't support this. But I think, over the number of years that I've sat here in this chair and I've listened and we said, you know what, let's develop a policy that talks about what should be, what shouldn't be. And the last one that was thrown in was for compassionate grounds. And to me, compassionate grounds is, I'll be honest, if I'm going to make that decision based on compassionate grounds, it's not based on the fact that, yeah, you just missed the date because of something, but you had a death in the family at that, and the check didn't make it or something, or I don't know, but we have so many tools eligible now for people to sign up to go on a monthly billing so that they don't end up in these. And even if something really dramatic happened in their life, they would actually be paid up. It would just happen. So, when we talk about the compassionate grounds, for me, it's not just about being late just because. And I'm not saying that that's the reason on this one. It's just the fact that, when people know when there's hard deadlines for things, I think we really have to respect that. And when we talk about it's just $88, well, each time we grant one of these, we're setting precedents for the next one. So what happens when industrial one misses it by a month? Oh, we just missed it because, and whatever. So I think unless it's something that's really, really got compassion, where it would really, really touch my heart, I've got to stay the course on this one, because to me it's just setting the precedence. So I am compassionate, but I just don't see this one as falling within that. So Councillor Abatoye on close. Yeah, hit your button.
Thank you. I'm not too sure why my colleague, Councillor Harris, is preempting the votes, because he may very well be the 4th votes we need. But we have policies, and the reason why we don't have robots here, but we have human beings sitting at this table to make decisions, is because we have the ability to use our emotions and use our, call it whatever you want to call it, compassion. And I agree that we all see things from different perspectives. For me, this is enough reason to waive on based on compassionate grounds. I know that many requests in the past have been denied, but I'm just gonna leave it at that, and let's just vote and see how it goes.
Okay, thank you. The motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. This one is to grant it. And that motion is defeated as well. So then the penalty stays in effect. Okay? All right, so we will move on to the next one. You can go ahead.
I will now provide background information regarding the request from Property Tax Roll 4614712 for waiver of the 2022 late payment penalties. On September 22nd, 2022, the City of Fort Saskatchewan received an application from the property owner requesting a waiver for the property tax late payment penalties in accordance with the property tax penalty waiver policy and procedure. As of September 28th, 2022, the property owner has paid the full balance of the outstanding property tax arrears, including late payment penalties in the amount of $365.07. The property owner has consequently made an application for council to consider the late payment penalty reimbursement due to an issue with the receipt of property tax and assessment notice. Administration is not authorized to make this decision, as only council has the authority to waive late payment penalties for property taxes. So for this decision, council has two alternatives. One, that council deny the request to waive the late payment penalties applied to the associated property tax roll 4614712 on July 1st, August 1st, and September 1st in the amount of $365.07, or that council grant the request to waive the late payment penalties applied to the associated property tax roll 4614712 on July 1st, August 1st, and September 1st, 2022 in the amount of $365.07. I can now answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you. So, questions, Councillor Harris?
This is a question to administration. So the situation that we just dispensed with, and we will dispense with in this case and the next one after that, given the fact that we've got 6 people here and it's a 3-3 split, and whatever the resolution is lost on a tie vote. Once we've not made a decision, by not making a decision, can the homeowner come back and request for a tax penalty waiver at a subsequent period of time, say in 2 months, hoping that there are 7 bodies sitting up here, in which case we would not have a tie vote, unless somebody was excluded because of pecuniary interest, which they would not, I would imagine. So the question is, could these 3 people, depending on what happens, apply for a tax penalty waiver in December?
I'm going to go to parliamentary on that. Mr. Fleming, you look like you want.
Through your worship, we'd have to actually look in the policy to see if you're precluded from coming back a second time.
That's my question.
Do you know that?
Through your worship, the policy itself doesn't speak to coming back for a second application.
My answer to that would be no, but I don't know that there's anything that would just be an administrative response. I don't think it's not in policy.
Okay, Miss Moulter looks like she's close. No?
Your worship, members of council, this is an unusual one. Just there is a motion to rescind. However, a motion was not actually made. I would just have to take this back and look at the avenue for the applicant to bring it back. A motion to reconsider could be made by a member of the prevailing side, but again, there was no positive outcome. So it is a unique situation, and perhaps our policy doesn't speak to it about applying a second time. That may be something that we need to discuss.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, would you like to make the motion? Since your light was on?
Your worship, this is just advice to council, but perhaps the best thing to do would be to move the positively worded motion in this case, and then that means we only have to do it the one time. Now that we kind of know where this might go, I would move the positively worded one, and if it's defeated, then that ends it.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Noyen.
Okay, is the
Whoops, sorry. Can you push your button again? Yeah, it's under the alternatives and you. And there is no prevailing side on this one yet. This is, can you push your, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'll move that council grant the request to waive the late payment penalties applied to the associated property tax roll number 46147112 on July 1st, 2022, August 1st, 2022, and September 1st, 2022 in the amount of $365.07.
Okay, thank you. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I can. I think the circumstances surrounding this this application for penalty waiver are significantly different than the first request that council has looked at. So I am prepared to vote against this motion as it stands.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion and debate on this one? Councillor Blissard?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. This is totally different circumstances, different request. And I mean, if somebody came forward, you could say there's compassionate reasons for every single request. You know, you feel bad that they had to pay. And I do feel bad, but some of it is a bit of people need to be aware that they do have to pay. I think the last case was extenuating circumstances. In this case, not so much.
Okay, thank you. Doesn't appear to be any further discussion and debate on this. Councillor Noyen, anything on close? Okay, I'll close the motion that council grant the request as presented. Please cast your vote. And the motion is defeated 0-6. So that one is clearly defeated. All right, thank you very much. We'll do the community partnership grant and then we'll take a break if everybody's okay. That one should be fairly quick. Community grant.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. This presentation is to request council's approval to submit a grant application to the Alberta Community Partnership, or ACP, grant program under the Intermunicipal Collaboration component. The objective of the ACP grant program is to improve the viability and long-term sustainability of municipalities by providing support for regional collaboration and capacity building objectives. The objective of the intermunicipal collaboration component is to promote municipal viability by providing support to municipal partnerships to develop or enhance regional municipal service delivery plans. A requirement of the ACP grant is that project participants confirm their project involvement through council resolution or motions. A similar motion was presented and passed by Strathcona County Council earlier today. If successful, the grant will partially fund a water system network expansion functional planning study. The study will determine how to best accommodate future water supply needs through a direct connection to EPCOR. The study will be the first step in design and expands beyond a desktop study to include field assessments. Your Worship, that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Okay, are there any questions? Question? Okay, go ahead.
Just two simple questions. What's the total cost of the project and what's the schedule as well?
Your Worship, $500,000 has been allocated to the project to date. The bids did come in higher than expected, so we are looking at the project in more detail. As for the schedule, optimistically, we are hoping to be back to council by May of 23.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blissard?
No questions. I'm prepared to make the motion.
Yeah, there's nobody else in for a request to speak, so go ahead.
Okay, I make a motion that council support the grant application to the Alberta Community Partnership Program to prepare the water system network expansion functional planning study, a shared servicing study to determine the best option for meeting future water supply needs. And in speaking to this, if we can get a grant for something that we need to do anyways, I think that definitely helps us a lot. And we definitely need to look at the future of our water supply.
Okay, thank you. Anything on discussion and debate on this one? Not seeing any. I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried. Thank you. So I think we will take a comfort break, recess. We don't have much to finish up unless, yeah, I think we'll take 10 minutes. All right, so we were recessed to 4:42. Okay, I'm going to resume the council meeting. All right, so we will get started. So the next item that we have is going into notice of motion. So we have 8.1 first. Councillor Harris, would you like to read it in and then you can speak to your notice of motion?
Yes, thank you. I would move that council direct administration allocate $70,000 from the Financial Stabilization and Contingency Reserve to study the feasibility of constructing stairs from the Chabot Park lift station to the river valley. The study would include 1, defining options for construction materials, 2, high-level geotechnical evaluation of the site conditions, and a Class 5 estimate for the project along with operating impacts. And further, the report be brought back for consideration before the end of 2023.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to speak in favor of your motion?
Yes, I would. I'm bringing this forward primarily as more of a safety and ongoing improvement to our trail system in the river valley. The area in question is serviced by a bike path that comes down from Chabot Park, which is the long linear park behind Pineview. And it does come down, but it's an extremely steep path. It was constructed on an old road alignment, which was put in there to construct the sewer outfall, the storm sewer outfall. And so when the trail was constructed, it was just constructed over the existing grade, which is about 15%. And it is very steep. And I think people walking up and down that trail find it to be an extremely steep trail. Plus, bikes come whizzing down there all the time during the summer. And it can be, I would say, somewhat hazardous. So the area that I'm suggesting in this notice of motion to look at is to look at the potential of building an actual stair network in behind where the lift station is. And the purpose would be to give pedestrians a stair access as opposed to the trail access. It's there, I get it, but I don't think it's as safe as it could be. And I think it would provide another alternative for pedestrians to access onto the trail network beside the river. I've thought about this a lot, and I think that ultimately, at this point in time, when we were talking about capital, I was thinking that this was an example of something that I think needs to be put on the list. I'm not advocating that it be built right away, but if we were to pass this motion and allocate the funds and undertake the study, then I think we would then know the feasibility of the capital project to put into our capital plan at an appropriate time in the 10-year long-term capital plan. And it might be a number of years out, or it might be very, very soon. And I would suggest that if this did pass, and if we undertake this work, then we can look at it from, I believe, a safety and an efficiency standpoint for people that access our trail network in that area. And I think that ultimately it would promote safety, and that's why I'm bringing it forward, because I think if it is feasible in that location, then it would definitely promote safe use of our trail network, which I think is one of our fundamental strategic priorities in our operational context.
Okay, thank you. The motion is now open for discussion and debate. Councillor Kelly, you're first.
Yeah, thank you. And Councillor Harris, a couple questions, if I may. Personally, I have no problem with the way you described your motion, getting something on the 10-year capital plan at an appropriate juncture timeline, and let's look at it as it comes through due course, and I can completely support that. But if that is the intent of your motion, why do we need a budget of $70,000 today, as opposed to just getting it on the capital plan and let's thrash it out as we thrash out the capital plan next June?
That is another alternative. That is the alternative, but I think in this context it was a question of how best to inject a potential capital project into the capital plan in a manner that ultimately allows us to determine the feasibility. Administration came up with a number of 70,000. I would tend to think that's probably high, but this could be an interesting area because it was a pushed area when they did the West Park development. And so there needs to be a geotechnical analysis in that area. And so the question is, would council prefer the option of just having it in, I guess I'm sponsoring it in the context of how else do we get it into the capital plan for discussion at an appropriate time?
Let me put that question to Mr. Fleming then.
Through your worship, this approach is good because it allows administration to go away and work with a vendor to actually figure out, because the question would be, what are we putting in the 10-year plan at what cost mostly? So this lets us actually poke a couple holes in the ground, take a look at a conceptual design, and you could actually get a number, a more accurate number to put in the 10-year capital plan.
Would this ultimate cost be comparable to the steps that we talked about, I think, at our last council meeting where we had a budget of somewhere around 300,000? Trusting my memory.
Yeah, through your worship, the conceptual, the cost in terms of just doing it, assuming that there's no impediments under the ground, would be very comparable to those costs. So we could use those numbers as a benchmark. Just to add in, though, I would. When we talk to the people within the city who have the long experience and long memories, Chabot Park has I think it was a garbage dump at one point or near that area. And we also believe that there was some dumping sort of down into the river valley specific to this location. So this is more about sort of a geotechnical check on the ground itself.
Okay, thank you. I've got further questions, but I'll get on again. Thanks.
You can have a second one. I didn't see that as a second one.
Okay, perfect. What about,
and we are on discussion and debate.
And we are on discussion and debate. Yes, thank you. So what about simply improving the path, Councillor Harris? I'm not a huge fan of the steps. I get it. There are occasions when they're necessary. I get that. But steps in and of themselves aren't necessarily inclusive for everybody. Neither is, though, a pathway that's too steep. So how do we make it inclusive and make it functional at the same time? And I'm not convinced that steps answer that question.
I'm actually going to go to Mr. Fleming for an answer on that as opposed to Councillor Harris, because that would be our steps better than redoing the path.
Yeah, there's probably some subjectivity to it, so maybe Councillor Harris would want to weigh in. Our experience with steps versus a pathway, the grade of this path makes it difficult for anybody to use in the winter. So we have had feedback on this before from the public, and the fact of the matter is, once you get a little bit of snowpack on there, it's pretty much inaccessible depending on the footwear that you have, I suppose. Steps allow it to be used year-round by people on foot. If you were going to look at some kind of a pathway that was accessible for everybody, again, then you get into an S back and forth and a lot more distance and whatnot. So this doesn't make it accessible to a broad range of people, but it does make it accessible to able-bodied people at the least.
Okay. Just a second. Okay.
Are we an inclusive community, Mr. Fleming? Yes or no?
To your worship, I believe we're striving to be that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll come back to you then, if you want. Councillor Nguyen, you're next on discussion and debate.
Yeah, thanks. Just a question for Mr. Fleming in regards to the bulk of this study being a geotech report. Does this give value to the city other than the potential construction of something on this site? As in, I actually didn't know that it was a garbage dump previously, so would this help us out other than for potentially building? I guess, does it need to be done otherwise?
Through your worship, I don't think it needs to be done otherwise, but it would be good to know. I think my suspicion is that this won't go away. There'll be, if it's not Councillor Harris, it'll be somebody else some other day that's going to ask this question. So I think there's value in having the information.
Okay, fair enough. And then just a question for Councillor Harris. So we have another metal staircase at the end, the southwest end, I'll call it, of River Park Drive. Does that not serve the purpose that we're trying to achieve by building a staircase to access that trail system to Chabot Park? In your opinion, please.
Okay, and we'll keep it just in the box on the answer.
No, it doesn't. It serves the access at that point of River Park Drive and that part of West Park going down into the flatland areas near the wetland area, which is stormwater management. This is further to the north if you want to go directionally in that direction, and it would probably be about 1.5 kilometers away. And so creating access points to the trail in the lower level of the river valley is ultimately what I'm trying to create. People can walk down that trail, but as Mr. Fleming has indicated, it's extremely steep. It's about a 15% or greater grade, which is very steep. And it should have been filled in, should have been engineered when we built the trail, but it was not. It was built on an old road right-of-way that was a service right-of-way. So what I'm trying to do is suggest that now is the time to do it properly. And a geotechnical analysis in that area, my knowledge from having been responsible for the planning and engineering department is that the dump that was in the West Park area in William Casey Park was further to the south. It was not over the edge. But there was a pushed area down into that to draw in that area, and there is concrete. So some concrete was being pushed into that area. So it was a dry waste site at that point in time. So we don't know how deep the fill would be, but most of it is probably just clean fill with concrete in it. Now, I don't know, and that's what the whole context of geotechnical is to do, is to analyze it to determine its validity.
My question just had to do with the location of that staircase. So thanks.
Okay, so asked and answered. Thank you. Councillor Blissard.
I guess my question to this is, how much access do we need? There's a pathway that is, my guess, 200 meters or something to the east. There's a stairs. You said a few kilometers. I don't think it's that far. I walk this area every single day. Those stairs are rarely used. There's a pathway that is a bit more west. The cost of this is going to end up being, $400,000 or $500,000 when you consider feasibility and everything else. I'm not going to support this. I see bikers using this, and I see why they use it. They want to go down the steep hill. They don't want stairs there. They enjoy going. I walk there all the time when bikers go. I don't feel unsafe walking there. I see in the winter tobogganers actually use this as one of those challenge, and maybe they shouldn't. Maybe we should have signs, but they use it as a way to go down and have a real fun, steep, challenging toboggan ride. Kids use it. Stairs are going to end up replacing all of that so that they can't use it for those purposes. I just don't see the need. We have 3 pathway accesses, 2 pathways and a set of stairs in that vicinity. Just to have another set of stairs, I just don't see the money is worth how much they're going to get used.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you. And my question is actually to administration, because I just listened to everything that's been said so far, and Troy had said that it's kind of like an imminent project, because if it wasn't Councillor Harris, somebody else would have brought it forward somewhere in the future. And my question is, why isn't administration the one bringing this forward?
Through your worship, I don't, of the 100 ideas that we have that kick around in our brains that we think could be nice to have or good things for the city, I don't think this one's necessarily been top of mind for me anyway. I'd actually ask Ms. Smith-Duguid if she wants to add to that, though.
Through your worship, one of the things that we are looking at doing in the future is the open space master plan, which should take a look at our standards for things like access to the river valley. And determine what's a good metric to use. So this is not necessarily top of mind, but it is an ongoing conversation.
Okay. What's the timeline for that?
Through your worship, the open space master plan is scheduled to commence after the land use bylaw, so 2024.
24, okay. Thank you. Just my final question. When Councillor Harris was doing his presentation, he talked about a safety issue. So is there a safety issue that's we should be concerned as a city in that area?
Mr. Fleming?
Yeah, through your worship, I think I don't think so. It's not. It's not. I don't. It's not an official city trail. We know that people go down there and use it, but it's not a piece of trail that we maintain or that it's part of our network. So we never stopped anyone from going down there, but
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
yep.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you. So the trail that is there, I used to walk that area a lot, but I never went down into the valley, is an unofficial trail. It's an unpaved trail that goes down the hill.
It's just a hill people slide down.
Okay, one at a time. Okay.
I
Mr.
think that's correct. It's just a cleared portion of the bank that
It's the right of way for the pipeline or whatever went down there, the road or whatever went down there. I would have less of a problem with this motion if the motion also adding a proper pathway for consideration in the motion, so that council would have the information to consider stairs or a path in that location. Councillor Harris, I'll leave it up to you to tell me whether or not you consider that friendly.
Okay, it's not considered friendly.
The topography of the area that I'm
Just-
proposing to have the stairs.
He's asking if you would consider that friendly. I'm suggesting it's not friendly.
No, it wouldn't be friendly, and I'm trying to explain why.
You're next on the speaking order, so,
Lovely.
okay. Mr. Fleming, did you?
I'm-
No? Okay.
Okay, thanks. The way it sits, and with respect, Councillor Harris, I'm having trouble supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go to Councillor Harris for close and final comments.
So if you have a chance to walk down there, the path that the city constructed with the assistance of the River Valley Alliance comes down out of Chabot Park further to the north. It's about 200 meters to the north from the area that I'm talking about. So if you look at the map, the lift station ultimately comes out of West Park and lifts sewage up into the Pineview area. So down from there slightly is where there is basically a fairly steep hill, and people walk up and down it if you're a mountain goat and if you have the capability, but anybody that would have mobility challenges would not be able to use that. Councillor Blizzard made the comment about kids sliding down there on their toboggans, and they do. There's no question about it. So what I guess I'm suggesting is to look at the feasibility of constructing stairs in that area to provide access. I think it provides better access than the one further to the west that Councillor Blizzard made the reference to. I think this one would be used frequently because a lot of people don't want to walk down the path further to the north, which is very steep, and it has limited visibility, and I would suggest that it is unsafe. And it's unsafe in the winter, and it's unsafe in the summer, because people on bicycles use it at a high rate of speed, and I've seen near misses on that. So I think it's personally unsafe, and so I'm very leery of using that in terms of walking. I would rather see another alternative to access up and down, and I think people would use it. I think pedestrians find the existing trail on the old right-of-way to be a challenge. It's extremely steep. 15% grade is a very steep slope, and especially when it's slippery in the winter. So I'm suggesting an alternative that would allow pedestrians to access up and down that hill, to come out of the William Casey area and Chabot Park to get down onto the flatland. That's what I'm trying to look at. And if it doesn't go, it doesn't go. I get it, but I'm suggesting that it makes sense to inject this into the capital budget from that standpoint, and then we can debate the merits of whether we actually need it there or not. But at this point in time, I'm bringing it forward for consideration for this group to look at supporting it from the standpoint of doing the planning to look at the feasibility. That's what I'm trying to get across. And I want to make sure that we do it from a safety standpoint primarily.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that is closed. So please cast your vote on the motion. Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay. All right. The next one is for the Bike Skills Park, and Councillor Macon was unable to attend this evening due to personal reasons. So in order to do this right, I just need a motion to refer this to the, I believe it's November 8th council meeting. So if somebody'd like to put that motion forward, Councillor Batoye.
I'll make a motion that's the notice of motion for Bike Skills Park be deferred to the next regular council meeting.
Referred. Okay, there it is. All right, thank you. I'm just going to close the motion on that, so you can please cast your vote. Did yours come up? Okay.
Yes, Your Worship, just seems to be a bit of a delay for Councillor Abatoy.
Okay, and that motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, the next one that we have is, it's actually my notice of motion. Does anybody have objections if I stay in the chair for this one? Any objections? Of course I'm going to be nice.
No one's allowed to ask.
Okay. Mine isn't coming up now. Good grief. Are you able to put my motion up? Okay, so my notice of motion is that council direct administration to add $150,000 in the 2023 capital budget to complete the asphalt paving of the parking lot at Henderson Park, and that the amount be funded from the capital projects reserve. So in speaking in favor of this, this would bring this into the capital budget. It's still, if council decided to take it out prior to the approval of the budget, that would still be permitted. But in speaking to getting the parking lot paved at Henderson Park, I just have a real question in my head as to why that parking lot was never paved. Every other parking lot that we have a city facility with in the city of Fort Saskatchewan has one. And I would probably question if the appropriate person was here. Was it just an oversight? Because it's a number of years. I don't know if you can answer that, Mr. Fleming. It's a number of years that, you know, the park was put in. You know, it tracks mud, it tracks dirt and debris onto the residential area and onto the main drag. And I would also ask the question about maintenance of it. You know, I would assume that it would be quite a maintenance issue as well, because it's so different. So anyway, you know, this one, it just never appears anywhere in the capital budget ever. And I'd just like to ask Mr. Fleming his thoughts on this one as well.
Yeah, through your worship, I mean, we have gravel parking lots through the city in a couple other places, tennis courts and dog park and whatnot. Most of the time when we do when we require a developer to put in a playground, I don't think we necessarily require a parking lot to go with it. If you think of all the playgrounds in the city, typically it's there for the folks in the neighborhood, and then street parking is used. I couldn't tell you why they decided to put this particular playground in this location. It's pretty far away. And I know when I got here in 2011, there was actually a few complaints. And we just had roads go and put down asphalt millings to create that parking lot that's there now. So, and that seemed to be satisfactory for people, and it got people off the street parking, because that's not really a particularly good street to park on with the cross section, with the rural cross section that they have there. So I wouldn't say I've had a lot of feedback on the need for it, but you know, it certainly would be nice to have an asphalt parking lot there, at least for the purposes of clearing snow, if nothing else. But
Okay, thank you. So the motion is open for discussion and debate. Councillor Harris?
So a question to administration. So do we have a standard that talks about what our urban standard is for things like parking lots? Some things obviously fall through the cracks occasionally, and this one maybe is one of them, I suppose. But wouldn't we say that if we have an urban standard, it would call for hard surface, correct?
yeah, through your worship, we do have standards, a standard for parking lots, but like I said before, we typically don't require them for playgrounds per se. But, and I'm guessing that's why it was never put in the development agreement. I'm making an assumption here, but.
And I can't honestly remember, because we had conversations with the developer when the estates were being developed, and a park was talked about, but then time passed and all those things happened. So we have a standard. So it's a question of whether, if we have a gravel parking lot there right now, our standard typically would be to pave it. And that's what we did down at West River's Edge, and which we will now do with the dog park at some point in the future, correct?
I think for city-owned property, there isn't a standard or a mandate that we have to follow. I'd say it's more of a choice in this case.
Yeah. Well, I'm just looking for the standard. I mean, ultimately, if we make something hard surface, then we reduce the maintenance, do we not?
Yeah, it would be a little bit better for maintenance, snow clearing and whatnot, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you. You mentioned it, Troy. I lived over there when that little playground was put in. I never personally understood why that playground was located where it is, and always considered that it would be somewhat temporary. And so, in that vein, who owns the land where the two soccer pitches are that are right adjacent to that playground? Is that city or is that privately held development land?
It's our land. Yeah, the soccer fields are city-owned property.
So that whole empty area there is city-owned property?
That entire field is city-owned property, except for there's a small square of land just directly northwest of that that belongs to a church.
All right. What plans, if any, does the city have for that property long term?
Through your worship, I'm not aware of any changes in plans to what's there now. We haven't contemplated anything different.
Can you comment any further on why that playground was located in that particular spot as opposed to somewhere closer to some houses at least?
Yeah, through your worship, I can't comment on that. My only, well, I'll check in. Do you have any idea? We don't know.
Okay.
I would assume that perhaps the folks that lived across the street would have preferred it to be pushed a little bit further away, but again, I'm just speculating.
I have lots to say on this, Mayor Katcher. Come back to me. I won't dominate the mic right now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nguyen on the motion.
Yeah, I'll just carry on with that line of thought, because it's good to know that there has been no conceptualization for this area. That playground as it sits is on South Fork Boulevard, and that's going to become more and more busy. I personally, and I've driven by this playground and the parking lot many times throughout a summer. I have not seen significant use for it, and the location of that playground might not be the best. I suppose is what I'm saying. I'm not sure what the benefit of having a pavement in this parking lot will bring, as currently doesn't have a ton of use as it is, and those soccer fields, they're, if you want to call them soccer fields, you can, but they're vacant land looking areas. So having a paved parking lot is not going to, doesn't seem to me like it's going to increase the use of any of the amenities that area has to offer.
Okay, let's see. Counselor Abatoye, you haven't been in the speaking order yet.
Yeah, thank you. So I actually don't agree with the points that was made about the playground not being used often. I usually see people there, and despite the fact that it's so close to a road, it's got a good barricade for safety of whoever kids that are playing there. I personally actually use it myself for my kids, and I think it's maybe not as used as like the bigger playgrounds, but I do know it's been used, and I do also do know that that's parking supports the parking lot being paved. As I do, like I said, I think it's been used. It's not like it's just abandoned, because I know there are other playgrounds in the city that are actually not even used at all, but this one is being used, and I do support the paving of the playground. In terms of the location, I know it's not really a great location, but it's there, so I don't really support uprooting it. I think it's being used, and we can continue to leave it there and even pave the parking lots, as it's been an issue for some time now. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Blizzard, your first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm going to support this. I don't like the idea of, spending $150,000. It is a one-time cost, and I definitely walk around West River's Edge lots and saw the difference it made in decent paving in that parking lot from gravel. So I do appreciate the benefits of a paved parking lot. So I think I'll support this because I'd like to see it paved, and if it helps with maintenance in the winter, I think that's good. I think having it paved will be more inclusive, so that helps too, because it isn't easy if you've got a walker and you happen to be bringing your grandkids or going to see them. And I think that parking lot is actually used not just for the playground. I do think some use it when the kids play soccer and then walk over. So good all around.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Kelly?
Thank you. I hesitate to not challenge the concept that we're going to recover the cost of this or some reasonable portion of it with maintenance savings. How many times a year do we actually clean the snow on that? And how much cheaper would it be to clean the snow on asphalt versus the hard pack that's there now?
Yeah, Your Worship, I don't, it wasn't my intent to give the idea that we would recover the cost through maintenance. I don't think that would be the case.
So I'm of the opinion, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there would be zero savings because that parking lot is so hard packed that the scraper goes in there now like it would if it's asphalt. But please correct me if I'm wrong.
Just in only speaking with staff, they much prefer clearing snow off of an asphalt surface than a graveled one. But again, I'd say it makes it a little bit easier, but I wouldn't say there's a cost savings associated with it.
Okay, thank you. I live there, and it's not that the playground is unused, Councillor Abatoye, that's not the point. I believe firmly that it's underused, and given the investment. We have a large area of open land that sits right adjacent to it that will be designated for some other use than a soccer pitch sometime in the future. I would certainly hope so, because the two soccer pitches that are there get used for about 4 weeks in the spring for 3 or 4 hours a day, and then soccer season is over for the little kids, and there's no activity on them whatsoever. So I actually drove my heavy truck onto that piece of property, that parking pad, yesterday. The parking pad is flat with good drainage. There is no pothole whatsoever on it, and it's gravel, not dirt. Does it look as nice as asphalt? No. But it's firmly hard packed. It's level. There's no holes, no ruts, nothing to take away from the use of it as a parking lot. And I honestly believe that whole area needs to be or will be redeveloped sometime in the medium term. And given that, I'm reluctant to spend money to fix what isn't broken and see that fix be deemed unnecessary sometime in the medium term as that particular piece of property finds a newer and better use. It works just fine for its purpose. I'm completely unaware of anybody complaining about it. I've not heard of anybody. It's used. It's lightly used parking lot. It's a lightly used facility, and that's the point. If we build facilities for that level of use, we'd be better off not having them and saving the money for something else. We really would, folks. So there's no problem. It works perfectly fine, and I fail to see the need to spend the money today. If in fact that area is developed and the parking lot becomes absolutely necessary and the volume of traffic warrants it, like the Dow Center, for instance, absolutely. The river valley that we paved, those roads, the road down in the parking lots there were atrocious because the volume of traffic on that particular location is many, many multiples higher than the volume of traffic in this particular parking lot. I'm not in favor of it. It's very functional, very serviceable. Does it look nice? Well, it looks darn good if you grew up in the country like I did. So I'm very good with it the way it is and would encourage council to leave well enough alone for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
My recollection of the file when we were negotiating with the developer to build the estates was the landowner dedicated a good chunk of land just immediately across from 94th Street and South Fort Drive for a future school, and it was a school and church. So there was a Christian school, Christian's church, and the location of the playground, as far as I can recall, is in close proximity to the south of where that site was. But the developer also dedicated land, and Ms. Dugan-Smith can correct me if I'm wrong, but where those soccer pitches are was part of their MR designation, I believe. And so that could conceivably be redeveloped for other purposes, but then you have to go through a whole process to deal with that. So the existence of the playground, from my recollection, stems from the fact that there was eventually going to be a church and a school location. And so it was an amenity that would help to support that in that regard. And that goes way back. And I don't recall in the time that I was responsible for the department having had conversations with the developer about the parking lot. I think just over time, it's more omission than commission that it was developed but not developed to an urban standard. And that's why I asked the question about the urban standard for parking lots. We have a parking lot there. Question is $150,000 a reasonable amount to bring it to the same standard as other parking lots that we have that, provide access for things like playgrounds and adjacent to a major transportation corridor, which South Fort Boulevard is. So I can support it on that basis. It just brings a utility, it brings an infrastructure up to a standard. And I don't think it's taking anything away from it. I think it's just enhancing the overall value of it in the long term. So I can support it on that basis.
Okay, thank you. So not seeing any other discussion and debate, just on close. Oh, go ahead.
I'd like to follow up with administration on the comments that were just made about the potential for a school there. Does administration consider some portion of that property to be a potential school site? And if so, at what point in time in the future, maybe?
Through your worship, that is privately owned land that is intended for a private school. I'm not familiar with their development plans though. And a church as well.
So it's completely out of our control. And in fact, they could do something else with it if they so choose.
Through your worship, as long as it's in line with the zoning and the regulations for the city, then yes.
So it could be used for something else. Yeah, it meets our standard. That was pointed out by administration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So just in close, I appreciate support on this. I understand, we can have gravel parking lots. We can have gravel in the city. I think this is a very pristine area that that we're dealing with. You've got the school across from it. You've got a state housing that's immediate adjacent to it. There has been complaints in the past about the number of cars that park along the street when there are activities going there. So I do believe when there are activities utilizing that area that they are also using the parking lot along with the school and when other things are happening. And for myself, when I drive by there and I see mothers getting out there with their kids and little strollers and things like that, it just reminded me again this year that one just seems to be one that has been neglected in that part of it. And it is such a beautiful, pristine area that people do like to go and park and visit, and their kids can play, and it is got the fence for security. So that's why I brought this forward. I do appreciate, if it can be added to the budget at this point in time. It's still open for discussion and debate as we move through the budget process. So I will close with that. So with that, please cast your vote. Motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, so we will move on. Are there any other notice of motions? Okay, can you push your button? Go ahead.
You bet. Thank you. At the November 8th regular council meeting, I will bring forward the following motion. That council directs administration to prepare a report outlining options and implications for the collection of detailed customer demographic information at city recreation facilities, and that the report include defining different levels of data collection options and associated benefits, costs of operational impacts of the collection and analysis of the information, and associated customer service and legal and logistical implications, and that the report be brought back for consideration before the end of Q2 2023.
Okay, thank you. And that has been submitted to Ledge Services. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, are there any other new notice of motions? Not seeing any. Are there any points of interest? Are there any councillor inquiries? Okay, seeing none, I will take a motion to go in camera. Councillor Blizzard.
I make a motion that we go in camera.
All right, for the purposes under FOIP, thank you. I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. And that is carried. Thank you. We are now in camera. And we can get rid of this.